Welcome again to 2 by 2 a weekly premium business podcast from the Ken, located at the intersection of curiosity and synthesis. We like to call it your own personal investigative brain. I'm your host, Rohan Dharmakumar, and I'm joined, as always, by my co host, Praveen Gopal Krishnan. I'm going to set up the context for the conversation, and I'm going to start with a very provocative headline, which is private coaching is eating away at schooling. India is currently in a slow but undeniably downward spiral with its school to college education system, which is the best method to not just harness our demographic dividend but also to help poorer families make the socio-economic leap. The schools to exams to college chain is broken, perhaps because now it's the schools to coaching to colleges chain. Schooling is a complex and vast space. There are over 59 boards in India, including 3 national level ones. There are differing syllabi. There's, of course, the NCERT and state level ones, various ones, right? It's a subject which is handled both by state and central governments. It has, of course, private and government schools. Then there's private coaching, which is, of course, dominated by the private sector. It's estimated to be a roughly $25 billion industry by next year. And increasingly, private coaching is becoming the determinant of good education and college, not schooling. And finally, exams, which are getting increasingly centralized, and as a consequence of that, accentuating our biases towards central boards, towards private coaching, towards bigger cities, towards boys instead of girls, and towards families with higher incomes. As a result, 12 years of schooling, which is actually one of the largest spends that an Indian family does over its lifetime, is becoming disconnected from college education and jobs. Of course, this can't be sustainable, which is probably why China in 2021 banned private coaching under the Double Reduction Act. Double reduction because A, it was designed to reduce stress and alleviate pressure on students and children, and B, it was designed to reduce the cost of private education and coaching and incentivize birth rates amongst citizens and families. Did it work? I don't know. It seemed to have pushed coaching underground and made group tuitions disappear, only to be replaced by secret and even more expensive 1:1 coaching. What should India do? That's the context for our conversation.
Our first guest is Sumit Mehta, co-founder and co-CEO of Lead School. Lead School offers school edtech solutions that transforms education for 3.5 million plus students at 8,000 plus schools across the country. With both parents as teachers, Sumit, CEO and co-founder of Lead, has education in his blood. Sumit has made it his life mission to solve one of the biggest challenges in India's education system, which is the gap in quality of schooling available in its small towns as compared to its larger cities and metros. By focusing on the tougher goal of transforming school systems, he has chosen to stay off the beaten track, followed by a majority of consumer K-12 edtech companies that focus primarily on after-school solutions. Welcome, Sumit. It's really good to have you here.
Thanks, Praveen.
Great. Our second guest is Maheshwar Perry, who's the founder and chairman of Careers 360. Careers 360 is a data-enabled and technology-driven education products and services company. It integrates millions of students and institutional data points with its user-generated preferences across 400 million students each year to help students explore and achieve career plans based on their interests and abilities. Careers 360 covers 36,000 plus colleges and offers 250 plus courses. Mahesh has been an investment banker with SBI Capital Markets and was with the Outlook Group for 17 years, including heading it for more than 10 years. Welcome to 2 by 2, Mahesh.
Thank you so much, Praveen.
And I'd like to introduce Nitin Pai, co-founder and director of the Takshashila Institution. Nitin is the co-founder of Takshashila, which is an independent think tank and school of public policy based in Bangalore. Takshashila Institution is an independent center for research and education in public policy. It's a non-partisan, non-profit organization that advocates the values of freedom, openness, tolerance, pluralism and responsible citizenship. It seeks to transform India through better public policies, bridging the governance gap by developing better public servants, civil society leaders, professionals, and informed citizens. Welcome, Nitin, to 2 by 2.
Hey guys, happy to be here.
Thank you, all of you.
Also, I want to tell our listeners that two of our guests, Mahesh and Sumit, are joining us remotely. So you might notice a slight difference in their audio quality. Alright, with that out of the way, let's get into the discussion.
Exams are getting increasingly centralized. And I'd like to bring in Mahesh from Careers 360 and ask you, Mahesh, how do you see exams in this chain?
So, thanks for inviting me, Rohin. The thing is, if you look at the student through the 12 years of education, we prepare the curriculum, we create the pedagogy, we create a testing pattern, we create the assessment pattern, we assess them, we pass them. At the end of it, we turn around and say, listen, it's not good enough, right? The other part of it is that at every class, if a student doesn't pass a certain level, he's also detained. In many of the states, there is also a detention system. So he obviously passed, and that's when he goes to the next level and the following level and the following level, right? So it is so unfair on the system to put pressure on the child to say, listen, you've done everything that we wanted you to do, but it's still not good enough. So you need to clear something else for which whatever we taught you over the last 12 years is not going to judge you, right? And that is very unfair. If you now look at, for example, quota kind of a thing, or even the NEET examination that happened recently, you actually had students who got very, very high score in entrance examinations who failed the class 12 exams. It's anecdotal, one or two names have come out, but many names would be there which have not come out. Remember that, right? And the other part of it is in one of the cases in Haryana where about 6 students got 720 on 720. When they were asked to take a retest, they got less than 600, in fact, right? So which means dramatically lower than what they would get, right? And the school scores, I'm told, is very, very bad. There definitely seems to be a lack of sync between what is being taught in the schools to what is good enough for you to move to the next level. So in Delhi, for example, like one is to have an entrance exam for engineering, medical, and all because there are limited seats and all. In Delhi, the school education is demonetized. You want to study further, you need to write CUET. Every Delhi student has to write CUET to get into any undergrad program anywhere in the in Delhi, right? It is so criminal because what is being taught in the school then? And 85% of the students in Delhi are in government schools. They can't afford coaching nor go through coaching, right? And when you now see the demographics of the Delhi University school students, you'll realize that you have disenfranchised a certain set of people because you impose something on them which in the schooling system has not been taught, and someone else who's better going through a coaching system is possibly coming through the whole thing. And that for me is a serious issue because on one hand we want the government of Delhi push students to the government schools by making the schools better than what they were and those kind of things. They invested a lot of money on the schooling system, but the schooling system score no longer matters for you to even do any program, any undergrad program anywhere in the in Delhi. And that for me is very, very wrong.
Mahesh, if I can ask you, exams and competitive exams have always existed in India, right? I mean, all of us in this conversation are in our 40s. So we've had those competitive exams even when we were coming out of school, right? What's the larger
Actually,
trend that's
Praveen,
playing on with
that's
exams?
not true. But that's not true. I think in our generation we had comparative exam, but if you go back one generation to my father's generation, just immediately after independence, board exams were actually the criteria to get into higher education. I think if you go back to the root, what happened was that the quality of the board exams basically went down, or it just was testing for rote. And some of the engineering colleges and medical colleges said, we want to set a higher bar, and they introduced the entrance exam, and then I think everybody basically started to catch on. So it is a combination of the lack of innovation in the board exams, because if you look at a CBSE or a state board, it basically tests for memory. And then people who are doing engineering college or a medical college want more critical thinking skills. So they introduce higher order thinking skill questions, and then the gap continued to widen. and therefore the school was preparing for board, and then you had to have an additional thing come in to prepare for. So it's been a gradual creep, I would say, over the last 50 odd years. Uh, but if you just go back, I mean, there was an era where board exam scores were good enough to get into colleges.
After this, we discussed how competitive exams themselves don't really enable the student to do anything other than to clear an exam and to try to get into their desired college.
Mahesh, I know you've just a couple of days back put out this video which essentially analyzes the NEET exam, and you did it in fair detail. We will post it in the show notes, a link to the video. But I would like to ask you, you're the one, I would argue that among the three guests on this show who studied exams and their evolution and their effects most closely. What is your view on exams? Is it a necessary evil? Is it the only way we can solve things? Is it time to do away with it? Is there a better way to do it? What's your view? I mean, I'm going to ask you to tell us about exams
See,
specifically.
I think I'll link exams to what Nitin was talking about, which is the outcome, right? Ultimately, we want our children to study, learn, and then grow, right? Now, what coaching institutions do is they tell you, "ये choice में छोड़ सकते हो." This is leave it for choice. This question is not going to come. Or you don't need to learn this because it's never come in the past, right? So what they do is they channelize you to crack an examination and not to learn the subjects, the concepts, and the topics, right? And that is the reason why people who are topping the entrance exams also are failing in their own class examinations, class board examinations, right? If if entrance exams will, a lot of people say that, listen, coaching institutions teach you concepts. That's correct. I think the coaching institutions survive because our school education system is inefficient. Had it been slightly more efficient, there is no way that a coaching institution can survive, because if you learn a concept, you learn a concept and you can crack that anywhere that you go, including an entrance examination, right? But the problem with the examination is that it only channelizes the student to learn in a particular way, only to a certain amount of thing. Like in Hindi, na, in the Hindi heartland, you have something called Kadha. I think Sumit would know about that. What Kadha does is it says, listen, you just learn this 18% topics, or up you'll crack the examination, right? And every coaching institution, specializes in that
Is that
Kadha,
is that the
and
fault
that
of
is a challenge for
exams,
me.
or those who are preparing or were essentially assisting you to crack the exams? Because doesn't this exist in some form all around the world? There are people who help you prepare. If you're going for an MBA, they will help you write the best application. So if any place in the world where competitive exams exist to gate entry into set of coveted colleges, wouldn't there be those who would help you crack it in some way?
You're absolutely right. That's a demand supply that Nitin was talking about. The way you dealt with is, see, a lot of people criticize Kapil Sibal for many things that he does, but I do think that he gave an equal weightage to the schooling system as much as to the entrance examination system, which means that you learn over the 12 years in the school, and that has got some value to it. At this point in time, you actually made it zero. And that's a big challenge. See, because what happens is, in school now, it is not on one single day that you're assessed. You are assessed for unit test, for there's a weight, there's a term examination, there is a weightage for that. Then for assignments, there's a weightage, and then you have the final examination for which there is a weightage. So it's a sum total of everything that you've done over 2 years or 12 years. Or nichod ke, there is a score that comes out of it, right? Now what we did was that we said that 12 years of work, or 2 years of work, or the 1 year of work on the class 12, for example, has been completely deep. You said it's of no value for you. Now I will assess you on this completely different parameter. That for me is a problem. If you have to put that back, saying, okay, I give some kind of weightage to the schooling system also, then the child has to go to the school. He has to learn in the school. He has to be sitting in the school. He cannot just walk away from the whole thing while he's preparing for something else. And that might still be a good case. But just to say that everything that you learned is of zero value, and now I'm going to assess you only on how you perform on a given day, for me, that's a big problem.
I'll talk about exams, and of course we have spoken about, Nitin has said that it's an inevitability. I know what you're talking about in terms of private coaching. I like to look at things through incentives and consequences. So, and again, some of these are anecdotal examples, but then we've already brought in anecdotal examples from Nitin, who spoke about going to Majestic and getting Aerodov. So let me also join in. So one anecdotal example is, for example, if you look at, say, engineering college like say BITS Pilani. Now BITS Pilani is a very interesting institution as an example, because in the past the way how you would get admission into BITS Pilani was exactly through your board examinations. I remember when I was doing my engineering, or just around that point in time, what they would do is they would look at all the board examinations that are held all over in the country, state boards and national boards, and they would have a normalization system internally. So they would create this thing where that says, oh, you've got 76% and you've come from, say, West Bengal State Board, as opposed to you got, say, 95% and you've come from Andhra State Board. Well, through our formula, we believe the ranking is this. Similarly, like for instance, I went to another engineering college like NIT Trichy. NIT Trichy does this thing where they used to have state quotas. Where they said that, look, from every state you send people based on your entrance exams, you do your own counseling, and when they come in here, the number of students from every state is a constant. So that was their system. So the minute both of these moved into a entrance exam based system, and you talk to people who are from BITS Pilani, you will see the unseen consequences of it. Like, for example, they moved to a BITSAT system, and almost immediately from that year on, the gender ratio changes completely. It changes and skews towards men completely. When you move away from the state-based system into an IEEE system, the state quota completely goes away, and you stop seeing people from, like REC Trichy and other RECs and NITs at that time had this thing where you had every state, you had some set of students in it. So in a sense, over your 4 years, it's almost like you've seen the whole of India. But now suddenly that changes. The number of states and the kind of people who come in changes completely. And I feel these are some of the unseen or seen consequences. But I also think there was an incentive at play where I believe that a lot of institutions, particularly on the engineering government side, believed that, you know what, let's just not get into this thing. Let us escape scrutiny of trying to figure out, because we don't want people coming to us and asking, how could you do this? What is this formula that you're using? Explain it to us. We will file a writ petition in Supreme Court. Let us not deal with any of this hassle. This is an entrance exam. Boss, you do your marks, you get your numbers, and we are done. I feel like that was also a part of it. And finally, in the last part of the conversation, we got into a solution mode. How should private coaching change? Should we even do away with it? In fact, Nitin had a somewhat revolutionary idea, which I'll let you listen to for yourselves.
I'll switch to a different country, China. And I want to talk about private coaching. In 2021, you referred to this earlier when Xi Jinping, what he did. China banned private coaching and education, and they called it, I think, the double effect, if I'm not mistaken.
They usually have some very
Right?
clever names for
Yeah.
all these things.
And the reason why they banned, and by the way, when they banned it in 2021, it was roughly $120 billion a year.
Yeah. So I just want to come in and say it was called the Double Reduction Act.
That's right.
And the reason they call it the Double Reduction Act was because from their perspective, they were reducing two things. Number one, they were reducing stress and alleviating pressure on children. And number two, they were reducing cost of private education to incentivize birth rate, but that's a separate thing altogether.
Right. So what, and a lot of the commentary on why China did something so drastic, like instantly companies went bankrupt. Like I'm talking about $120 billion a year, right? Large companies, multiple companies the size of Baiju's, like, shut shop and went bankrupt. Why did they do it? Because they felt that what was happening in China was in some senses similar to what's playing out right now. That education, 12-year education itself is very expensive. It's one of the most expensive things for a family. Plus, they also have to put in kids increasingly in a competitive way for private coaching in order to get into crack exams and get into colleges. And I think what they saw was that the writing on the wall is this is not going to end well for, firstly, people who are having fewer kids because it's so expensive. Second, at some point in a large country, things are going to snap. Like the point that you made about why aren't enough people protesting. It's true till at one point it suddenly isn't. And then a lot of people suddenly rise up and say, what's going on? We can't survive. This isn't sustainable any longer. So China banned private coaching in 2021 because one of the fears was social unrest, right? So, I mean, I'll ask you folks this, and I think I'll start with you, Mahesh, because you've got very strong views on this as well. And in your last video, you ended by making a provocative point. You said look, either the government or policymakers should consider ending private coaching because it offers a completely unlevel playing field to everyone, or you have to make it affordable and accessible to everyone so that it is not a determinant. So my question to you is, I'll start with you, Mahesh, is there a chance that we are going to see some version of what China did with private coaching, which is essentially a clamp down on it, because otherwise things might get much, much worse?
So one small correction. What I said there was that either we should have equal access to coaching for all students, or the schools must undertake to ensure that the students are prepared to crack an entrance exam also, right? Because
Thank you.
ultimately
I
the
stand
school's
corrected.
objective is to the school's objective is to make the student succeed in the career, right? Now the thing is, I don't think that we as a nation should be clamping down on a student wanting to learn more or learn better, right? Because that just goes against the grain of what we're trying to create. Now, how do we alleviate that? How do we still, ensure that there is equity and fairness? By ensuring that the other set of people also have an equal weightage. So for me, you want to spend $1 million to learn better and be better than someone else, please feel free to do that. It's your money, right? But how do we ensure that the other part of it also is got equal weightage? You need to ensure that there is a weightage for the school education. At this point in time, people are only veering towards one, which is coaching. You bring in some kind of a value attached to a school education and what happens in schools also, you will actually see some kind of a thing. And the advantage in this whole thing, Rohin, is that if you take state boards or central boards or whatever, no, all of them, private and public, are lumped together when there is a common examination that happens. So you might study in the best school possible where the fees is the highest, but you'll still be competing with a school student in a government school who's studying hard because they want to make a career for themselves. Right. So, and there is a lot of equity in that, because if you see the toppers in schools, you won't find many private schools as much as you'll find government school students coming up. Right. And that is through sheer hard work, despite the issues that we have with government education system. It's only through sheer hard work that it happens. So now, if you have to put some kind of a weightage to the schooling system, which we completely removed from, we basically removed the clause out of the system and handed it over, चाबी के साथ हमने coaching को दे दिया, then it's a problem for me. Otherwise, I don't think we as a nation should be stopping anyone from learning more because they think that they will learn more at a, like, private tuition आ जाएंगे तभी. If you remove coaching, private tuition आएंगे आपके. There is no end to that, because the parent will always keep investing in the child to study better and have, be better than the next one around. So that we should not be getting into it.
Sumit, what do you say about private coaching?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Mahesh. I mean, parenting is Darwinian in that sense, and every parent is giving their child like an extra advantage for them to do better than the child. So, I think prohibition or all of that, I don't think is the solution. The root cause essentially is to eliminate the need for exams or the coaching or the competitive exams, and I think that's the direction. If we take, uh, ultimately, then people will start responding to the incentives you create. So, if the to my mind, the solution is not prohibition of coaching. My mind, the solution is eliminate the need for coaching, and that can happen if there are 10x the number of good colleges that we have in the country, and not just engineering medical colleges, but also good liberal arts colleges. Because, like I think Mahesh and Nitin was saying, 30% of people actually take the science engineering stream, and then the remaining take commerce and arts, right? But they don't have, apart from say a Ashoka or a Flame, we don't have good liberal arts colleges today. And the erstwhile colleges that Nitin was referring to are, yeah, have atrophied. So that is the first solution. Second is give autonomy to the colleges to decide their admission criteria, which could be a combination of board exam results and apps. And in fact, I wonder why colleges and universities don't have strong, robust admission offices which can look at student applications and solve, because these are solved problems in other countries. Why should we be still grappling with them? Then the third thing is, in addition to more colleges and not a single dimension exam entrance, but a more holistic exam, we should also have in that holistic board results as like a significant proportion. So therefore, the focus shifts back to schools, and then we focus on, okay, now how do we make our schools work better, which is still an unsolved problem. But then at least we are solving the right problem, because if a child is spending 6 7 hours, then you can not only teach him the conceptual skills, but you can also build character, you can build social skills, which makes a whole human being. So yeah, that looks like the direction we should be headed towards.
Got it. Nitin, I want to ask you a policy question, but before that, I'll explain, like, again, as a lay person. So, any of you, if you want to correct my assumptions, please feel free, you included. I see this again, like, to go back to something that Praveen said about incentives. Let's look at this as a market problem. Now, we understand that a child and a family that has a child is a lucrative annuity market. So if you were to look at it from the point of view of a business, it's a child who's he or she is going to enter a school and stay in school for 12 years. So you can expect a certain level of fees from that child at 12 years, right? And of course, like, and let's forget about what happens after that. Like, let's keep it at that. Now, it is the fact, like, I think it's undeniable that government spending on education has been coming down over time, right? It is, I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong, but running schools is still technically a not considered to be a non-profit business, right? Like, schools.
It has to be.
Yes, that's right. Right. It's I call it technically non-profit because, like, most schools operate through the service provider model where it is possible to make profits, though the school itself runs on a non-profit model. Now, if you were to view the reason why some of you earlier said that coaching used to operate for 11th and 12th, then it spread to 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, now it's come down to class 6, is purely because of an economic opportunity. The coaching sector, the private coaching sector, is unconstrained by profit motives. There are no rules on it. They are allowed to make profits. They will naturally optimize for profits. There is private capital there. So they will expand into schools to take away more and more money from the pockets of parents and as possible. So in this system where education budgets from governments is coming down and a child and their family is a source of revenue for 12 years, why would not coaching continue to eat away more and more money? And what would change with respect from a policy point of view? How would you solve this problem?
See, here's the reading, right? What we've done here is an equivalent of what we used to talk about bank bailouts, right? You privatize profits and you socialize costs. That's exactly what we've done here, right? We've privatized benefits and socialized costs. So the benefits accrue to private test prep companies. Why? Because your schools are run at non-profit, right? And the government schools are underfunded. And therefore, the money which would have gone into education has diverted into the test prep industry.
And instead of from the pockets of the taxpayers, from the pockets of the families.
From the families. Second, now you and I are paying for IITs, AIMS, and all these top-notch government institutions, right? Because as taxpayers, we are paying this. But who's capturing the benefits of that? The parents of the kids the kids and the parents who've managed to get the kids into IITs, right? And that's privatized. Now, you could say there are external benefits of people in IITs, etc., but largely it's captured by parents those are the people who could actually get their kids into coaching classes, etc., who paid this private guy to make, profit out of the test prep and sent him to a college like IIT or AIMS where the fees are so low that they're just getting fantastic returns on their investments, right? So our education system, therefore, it's definitely a unfair lottery system, right? And it's a complex adaptive system. I think Sumit mentioned some things and Mahesh mentioned something. How do you raise school levels? How do you make other colleges raise their levels? How do you make government spend money on colleges, etc.? In a complex system, everything is interconnected, right? And you can't say that, look, this is the problem alone and fixing this is going to solve all. But there is one leverage point, and I'm going to set the cat among the pigeons. Okay, this is a revolutionary idea.
Go ahead.
Okay,
I've
written about it. It's a revolutionary idea, and it's a very simple leverage. What you do is you have a screening system. You have a basic screening test for all the kids who want to get into competitive exams. This is just a basic screening test that basic science, basic mathematics, etc. It doesn't require you to do any test prep. If you've done a basic 12th grade in any state board, you should be able to pass this test. It's a pass or fail test. Once you pass this test, you get a lottery, number, and your IIT, your NIT, and your AIMS, all these places are awarded to you purely on the basis of random lottery. Okay, you could even have reservations on this. 30% of the seats goes to this category, 40% goes to this. So social justice is maintained, but to everybody else, it's just random. Now, if you're IIT, right, currently you're basking under the fact that the kids who come in are already so smart and worked so hard that you could literally sit in IIT, not teach anything. 4 years later, you'll get really good output, right? But now, if it's by lottery, your IITs have to work harder, right? Now you're getting an average, at a large sample, you're getting an average kind of a student. Now you have to take this average student and make this student extraordinary. Now earn your bloody elite status, right? Now you go into AIMS. You do the same thing, earn your elite status. You have to bring your students to a higher level. Now, what happens to the other kids who didn't get in? Now, a lot of these people will be above average. They'll have above average expectations. They'll go to local colleges.
Once so you're inverting it in some sense.
Yeah, and then your pressure is on local colleges to improve your standards, no? Because now better students come to local colleges and your local university.
So what you're essentially suggesting through this lottery system is that those who don't make it through the lottery system will include a lot of privileged folks who are now forced to go to local colleges, and therefore they will exert their privilege
to improve
the standard. Yeah. So you're kind of inverting.
Yeah, and what happens to a test prep guy in this business? He can continue, I'm sure you can continue to do test prep and do these coaching, whatever for. But it's not really going to be a big deal because you're getting it out of lottery. And the fundamental part, which is what I made in the point I made in the beginning, is it was already a lottery. It still is a lottery. Right? Between the first 20,000, first 100,000.
It's just a fairer lottery.
It's just a fairer lottery.
It's not a more privileged
right.
lottery
and
for richer folks.
And you're now giving a chance to some guy who's sitting in a small town somewhere in India. Now he gets to study at IIT, man. And why is that a bad idea? Now,
I'm really puzzled. Okay, I get it. It's actually a very innovative solution, to be very honest. But I'm a little puzzled why you're not advocating for a greater public investment into education at the central level or at the state level.
No, he knows what's possible and not not possible.
Yeah, okay,
it's about incentives. It's about incentives. You can argue. We've all done this for the last 40 years, right? We've all said you raise your health expenditure, raise your education expenditure, build better college. Nothing seems to be happening, right? So now, if you change the incentive structure, right, and say that the powerful people in each city, the rich and the powerful in each city, you can't send your kid abroad, you can't send your kid to an IIT or a NIT. You have to by force study in your state. Now you will go and try and improve it, no?
It's almost like you're resetting the whole board. You're throwing the table up, you're throwing everything up and making it into
I think you need something like this to shake up the system, because you know what you're trying to do. Otherwise, there are a lot of platitudes, man. We're just saying, you need to increase number of good colleges in Bangalore. Right, everybody agrees, then nobody does anything, right? Because there's no pressure, there's no fire under the minister's chair to change anything. But once you have rich people and privileged people setting fire under your chair, you'll move.
Sumit, I think you want to make
is going
a point.
after you.
I think, basically the solution essentially is, if you don't increase the supply of good colleges, whatever we say is not going to work, because there are, if I remember correctly, some 10 million college students who are trying to get into college. 1 million in IIT and 2 million in NEET, and the rest in other colleges. But there aren't enough good colleges. Now, Nitin's solution in terms of randomize the admission, I think every decision has its own consequences. This will have the consequences of people who deserve to be in a college and do not get, and then we will be having another panel to say, how do we solve for that fairness? Essentially, if we say that the solution is to increase the supply of good colleges, because that's where the reason, that's the cause of all these pain of entrance exam and the pressure of entrance exam and the need for coaching for entrance exam. I still feel that, unless we eliminate that problem, it's not going to solve. Even if we have this basic
Sumit,
pass-fail test.
But the point that Nitin is also saying is that unless this problem is felt by India's privileged, it's never going to get solved. So you have to, in some senses, inconvenience or disconvenience India's privilege through this lottery system, where they are forced to suddenly confront the fact that, wait a minute, why are we not building better colleges? Why are we not building new colleges? We demand it, right? So otherwise, I want to just have Sumit complete his point. Why would, I don't think anyone will disagree with the fact that we need more colleges and we need to improve our existing colleges. The question is, they're not getting done, right? So, what will cause it to change, Sumit?
I mean, I think one is revolution, which is what Nitin is saying. Second is,
Oh,
like what
we use the R word.
no, he said, I'm going to give a revolutionary idea. I think the way the Delhi government tried to solve it by making it an election issue, and then Punjab followed, and then a few other states are following by making education a electoral topic. I think that, to my mind, is a more democratic solution where people ask for whether it is higher spend on education, and I'm saying not higher is not the only solution because even our current spend is not getting utilized well, but just having investment in good quality education and building the institutional capacity. If people start demanding for it in a democracy, that is the path. And a few states have already shown it, so I'm not losing heart. It's not possible. It might be slower than how we want, but that to my mind seems to be a more sustainable democratic solution to this.
Sumit, with each passing year, my hope about investment in good education system actually is falling apart.
Thank you for listening to 2 by 2. What you just listened to is a short version with some of the most interesting parts that emerged as part of an hour and a half long discussion. You can get access to entire conversation with a premium subscription to the Ken, or get a subscription to 2 by 2 on Apple Podcasts. We are a new podcast and we are also trying out a lot of new things and would love to hear from you about what's working, what's not working, and what more can we do to make every episode better for you. Please write to us at 2by2@theken.com and let us know what you think about it. This episode was produced by Anushka Mukherjee, and my colleague Hari Krishna is the lead writer and researcher for 2 by 2. Our resident sound engineer Rajiv CN is the audio producer for this episode.